So, hey guys, this is Colby here. I just wanted to make a quick video or review of this movie that I called Saw the Remaining. It was made in 2014 by Affirm Pictures, which I think is owned by Sony Pictures. Um, I think I saw that on the TV, the titles when they came up. But pretty much, this movie was about roughly about the last days, right? And it was on Pureflix, so it was, I guess, categorized as a Christian movie. And I just wanted to do a video about it because there were so many errors that I saw in this movie. And let me actually for some reason my TV was on autoplay. So um, there was just so many things that I was pointing out to myself about this movie. And this is one of the reasons why I am reluctant to watch a lot of Christian movies. I don't mean I go out and I watch just barbaric movies. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying if I'm going to watch a Christian movie, I got to know that it's legit. Because I don't want, because there's two extremes to this. Before I get into the review, let me just say this. There are two extremes to this. When you watch a movie as a Christian, you need to be careful because there is a limit. Anything that's related to horror or, mass murders or bloodshed, like barbaric, gruesome, evil bloodshed, and you go to the theater as a Christian and you watch it, I'm talking about like Friday the 13th, Halloween, these evil, that just glorifies evil. And there's other movies that I'd rather not mention. Um, you know, but there are a bunch of movies out there, you name it. You see these paranormal movies with like these demonic creatures and all that stuff, and people go watch that, and it's just like, there's that extreme. You don't want to do that because, first of all, you're setting your eyes upon something that obviously is not even remotely glorifying God. Then you go to the other, I guess you would say, extreme, and maybe to counter that, you would want to watch a Christian movie, which in essence, that's a good thought to have. But sometimes these Christian movies don't actually give you the truth. It's a hit and miss, and that's why I gotta guard myself either way. Because even with Christian movies like this one, it looked good at first, but then it just very quickly started to just go downhill, and there's a lot of things that were just false in it and stuff, and But let me get into the review. So it's about three friends, okay, or no, not three. It's about a handful of friends in the movie, okay, and they're at their friend's wedding, okay. They're getting married, right, and everybody's happy-go-lucky in the beginning, partying, whatnot, and everybody in the movie, is acting as if nothing's going to happen, and it's oblivious to what's about to happen, right? Um, then certain people just automatically drop on the floor, and the characters in the movie are thinking that they're dead, and basically it's later, or not, maybe not later, but in a few scenes after, it's explained that the rapture happened, right? And we know that the rapture, in reality, okay, if people are actually going to vanish, because Paul says that in a moment's notice, at a twinkling of an eye, we shall all be changed, right? That the dead in Christ shall rise first, and then we who are alive and remain shall meet them together in the air, right? So, we know that the rapture is an actual sudden disappearance. Okay, our bodies are actually going to, the dead who died before us, but they were saved, their bodies are going to go up, and then their soul is going to meet them in the air. God is going to supernaturally give them a glorified body. We who are alive and remain, we will be raptured. Our bodies will go with us, but God will have to give us a glorified body in that process because corruption, we live in corrupted bodies. Corruption cannot inherit incorruption. So therefore, our bodies have to be changed. Okay, but God does all that in the rapture when our bodies actually go. Now, our clothes will probably, stay behind most likely because, we don't need our clothes. But God is going to use our bodies. He's going to give us a glorified body, a body that is no longer destroyed by sin, right? So, in the movie, already there's just biblical, inaccuracy. And I tried watching it, without thinking about it, but I just couldn't help but to say, you know what, that's just not biblical. So, but I continued watching the movie, and then, about maybe 5-10 minutes in after that, there's this, you hear these weird, you know, beasts, but they're invisible, and you can hear them flying around, right? And it's later, and they're like picking people up and throwing them, and stabbing people like with their tails and stuff, but they're invisible, so you don't actually see the creature until a little bit later. You sort of get a glimpse of it here and there, or creatures, I should say. And later they're described as the creatures, and I think Revelation 9 that have, tails like serpents or scorpions, and they're basically like they're basically the demonic spirits that come out and they start tormenting people, and they have a sting like a scorpion, and they sound like horses as they're flying around. That's in Revelation 9. That's a part of I think the sixth trumpet, right? So automatically there's that. And you're right, this is 24 hours within the time frame of when this rapture happened in the movie. But let me take it back a minute. One of the first things you see after the rapture is these giant hailstones that are falling from the sky. This is like this is like not even 5 minutes after the rapture happens in the movie. Then you start getting to the sixth trumpet, demonic spirit creatures, and already you're just like, okay, well, that doesn't happen until 3.5 years after they're in the tribulation period, because then that's when God pours his wrath out. That's the bowls of wrath. And you see it within like 24 hours of the rapture. So automatically I'm like, okay, that's just not true either. There's a lot of jump scares, and honestly, I debated on whether or not I should just turn it off. And I thought maybe there's going to be some, heartwarming moment in the movie, right? And I know in the tribulation, in reality, there's not going to be any heartwarming thing. But in the movie, it was on Pureflix, and I was just kind of hoping that, there would be some moment where the characters sort of, they sort of get saved, right? The only character that really got saved in the movie was this pastor that was left behind. And he told everybody that he was a fraud, and he kind of got saved. But then he died because one of those creatures killed him, right? And I'm just watching this movie, and I'm just like, things just happening over and over again that just aren't biblical, right? And so that's, basically, that's, the movie just is not biblical. If you've seen the movie, if you're a true Christian and you understand true eschatology, which is end time events, basically just in a nutshell, that's what eschatology means, just end time events. But you can read it all in the Bible; it's there. But if you're just even if you've even read the Bible a little bit as a Christian, and you start reading about the rapture and all that stuff that is going to happen, then when you watch this movie, you're going to see that there's a lot of things that just aren't adding up. Now, here's one thing that I did find that was kind of genuine about the movie, which was there were some characters in the movie talking about how they were faking being a Christian all this time, that they just called themselves spiritual, that they just went to church to make other people happy, and they had no relationship with Jesus, and they just thought it was all a joke, and they just went along, and stuff like this. And seeing the characters talk about that and confess that in the movie was, that was I guess a plus. But other than that, the movie just wasn't great. It wasn't great, and as far as a Christian movie goes, it just wasn't biblical. So I watched the movie, left with feeling this really wasn't. I don't know if a lost person watches this movie, I don't know if they're really going to come to the conclusion that they need to get saved. The Antichrist wasn't even prevalent in this movie. I mean, he wasn't even there. So already it's kind of like all you saw. And the thing is, the movie made it seem like the people who were left behind were the good guys. It made it seem like, you know, it was never really explained why God was allowing this to happen. It was touched on here and there, but it was never really explained as to why God is letting this happen. All you really saw was more of just the fallen angels, the demonic killing people. That's really all you kind of saw in the movie. You know, people did pray and stuff, but there was just a lot of biblical inaccuracies, you know. And I think the movie assumed that if you were like a clergy or something, like a Catholic priest, or if you were a pastor, then somehow you were more inclined to believe than the next person. That's just not true either. You know, we all have to come to salvation, and Catholicism, the Catholic Church, they don't teach the truth at all. So already there's that. But the movie kind of assumed that if you were predisposed to Christianity, or you went to a church as a kid, you were more prone to get saved, which, you know, isn't true, because anybody can get saved. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter what your upbringing is. So there was just that, you know, and they just made it kind of seem like people who are left behind were the heroes trying to make their way through an apocalyptic world. And, you know, it was just kind of like, you know, and then all the geopolitics that are going to happen in the tribulation. The movie was just as a paranormal activity type of movie is what it was. There wasn't any real Christian teachings in the movie, or I should say, there wasn't anything biblical in the movie. There wasn't anything that was solid in the movie. So, you know, and I'm just reviewing it as a Christian, and I'm also saying that you just got to be careful about the Christian movies that you watch. I'm not saying don't watch Christian movies, but sometimes people want to make movies, and they might start off with good intentions, but the movies sometimes end up becoming not rooted in truth. They kind of swerve into a different direction. And you just got to be careful, you know. I'm sure the Left Behind series was an awesome series. I think that nothing can really top that. Okay, I think that there was some creative liberties, but it wasn't like far-fetched creative liberties. It was just, you know, character development. It was, you know, what the Antichrist might look like. It was those type of things. But other than that, it was a really good, solid movie, and those movies helped me soften my heart before I got saved, you know. And they were, for the most part, really biblically accurate. You know what I mean? In the book, I know that the movies there were only 3, but the books really, I think, for the most part, I mean, I know there's probably some things in the books that are a little bit, you know, could be a lot better. You know, could be taken a lot better. Could be, you know, maybe a little bit more solid. Okay, but other than that, you know, it's I think those movies probably are the closest to what the rapture and what the tribulation is going to be like. I do think in the books that there's this mention of when the mark of the people can get saved after they take the mark, which that's not biblically accurate. If you take the mark, you're doomed. But other than that, I think that they're pretty solid. But again, you just got to be careful. You don't want to make something like that and then kind of lead people in the wrong direction. So that's kind of my review. If I had to give it like 10 stars or whatever, or if I had a 10-star limit, I'd probably give it like a 2. You know, maybe even a 1. That's just kind of how it just wasn't anything solid about it, you know. But I will say that, you know, the tribulation period is going to be a time of great turmoil. There's going to be when I say turmoil, it's going to be a time where people, because here's the reality, they live in a, right now, Jesus says that when the rapture happens, people are going to be, it's going to be as it was in the days of Lot and the days of Noah. People are going to be eating, drinking, giving in marriage getting married, giving in marriage. So people are going to be walking around this earth thinking that there, it's just going to be a time where people are oblivious. And the signs are going to be happening all around them. Noah was building an ark. God was about to send judgment down upon Sodom and Gomorrah. There were signs. People weren't left without signs. There were signs all around them. And they still just chose to not see it, right? So when the tribulation happens, it is going to be a time where you do not want to be here. You do not want to be here for that time. But if you're left behind, you've chosen to be left behind. Can you still be saved in the tribulation period? Yes, but don't risk it, because I think people like to think of their odds of survival in any case, in any given situation, as, high. In the tribulation, your odds of survival, the first 3 days of it, are very, very, very low. The fact it's so low of a percentage that you don't even really want to change. I mean, you're basically as good as dead, basically, is what I'm saying. You don't want to be left behind for that. If you do happen to be alive within the first week of it, you have time to ask Jesus to save you. But salvation now in the age of grace is different. Let me put it this way. There are dispensations in the Bible, eras of time, and in each era, God is still the same God. Christ is still the same Christ. But just like how it was back in the law, okay, where people had to give animal sacrifices, and God had to consume the sacrifices on their behalf, right? When we move into the age of grace, where Jesus died for us, where we don't have to perform animal sacrifices, where we can believe freely in Christ and be saved, right? Because now it's, if we believe through faith, okay, His grace will save us, and it's nothing that we do. It's not our works. There's nothing that we can do. It's simply believing on Him for salvation and nothing else. If you add on to it, like Paul says, that's you're a heretic and you can't even be listened to. In the tribulation period, okay, it's no longer the age of grace. No longer you freely believing. You believe on Christ, and that's good. That's a requirement in the tribulation. But it's one of those things to where, well, there's really nothing else that compared to it, really. If you believe on Christ, God is going to ask, you're basically going to have to die for your faith. Because the alternative is taking the mark of the beast. And that is where is going to determine whether or not you really want salvation or not. So it's going to be different in the tribulation period. And you don't want to be left behind for that. Okay? So, long story short, we're right around the corner of that. Okay? We're so close and nobody even realizes how close we are. Okay? Don't watch or listen to things that you've heard before. Don't take biblical doctrine from a movie that you saw. Okay, take biblical doctrine to the Word of God, to the Bible. That right there, you'll never go wrong with that. People can lead you astray, the Bible won't. Okay, so by closing, I've given you the review. I've given you, the reality. And I just want you guys to realize that, just be careful about, use discernment. God's given it to you. And, be wise. And, just don't believe everything that you hear, essentially, that calls itself Christianity. Make sure that it's rooted in the Bible. Make sure it's biblically accurate. Make sure it's biblically sound. Love you guys. See you guys later.